Good evening, everyone. It's Kelly coming to you from the usual northern Saskatchewan. It is August 14th today, and I would like to do a shorter video than my last long video about walking away from the left or leaving the left. But I would like to talk about the meat and potatoes of it a little bit. And there's one word that comes to mind when I think about why I really did finally overall convert back to conservatism and libertarianism. And that word is empathy. Now, it wasn't empathy all on its own that made me leave. Empathy in itself is a very good thing. It is pure in and of itself, and it can't be tainted, you would think, except for that it can, and it has been. And that's particularly why I left the left, is because empathy got turned into something wonderful and pure, whereby we are able to be compassionate and sympathetic to our fellow man and see beyond the situation in front of us and be able to try to put ourselves in their shoes. Now, this of course is a good thing, and I don't see how it could have been taken into a bad thing, but like anything, some people that suck can turn anything good and turn it into a bad thing, and I really think that's what's happened here. So when it comes to empathy, the definition, I guess, doesn't really matter. We kind of just went over it, but I do feel like it's been ill-defined lately because it seems like people are more concerned with empathy, meaning that you automatically agree with whatever the topic at hand is, and it's usually something that's handed down by media or government or an article or incident at hand that everybody's talking about, whatever social, political crisis of the moment. Those are the things that are, I guess, what make us or make people decide whether we are or are not compassionate, empathetic people. And I find that really interesting because I used to just automatically assume that anybody on one side of, let's say, immigration, for example, I'm going to use that as an example because it's fresh in my mind, because very recently, as basically a good example of this case, a very good politician, one of my favorites in Canada, Maxime Bernier, who is a conservative MP in Quebec, who could have possibly been the leader of the Conservative Party, but did not win out to Andrew Scheer, unfortunately. Otherwise, he would be running for PM in 2019, which is, I digress. It's unfortunate that he's not, but he's a very level-headed guy. I like him because he's actually fairly libertarian. In fact, so libertarian that the leader of the Libertarian Party, Tim Moen, has made it clear that if Maxime Bernier ever decided to leave conservatism and come to the Libertarian Party, Tim Moen would step down and give him his position. So, of course, we're all hopeful for that as libertarians, but I think we probably will have to hold our breath. So, Maxime Bernier made a comment with regards to Justin Trudeau's diversity comments and policies and beliefs in general. And he did not criticize diversity or Canada's diversity. Rather, he criticized, essentially, I'm paraphrasing, but he criticized, ever-growing diversity in the sense of diversity to the point where he feels like people are actually kind of joining their own little tribes in Canada and that people aren't necessarily assimilating. And this isn't necessarily untrue. We certainly do see a fair bit of division, and there has been, some issues of things maybe clashing culturally. Now, nothing's really happened in Canada because we're so accepting, and people don't really have to assimilate into this culture or give up their own in order to be a part of Canada. We just sort of go with the flow. And up until now, for the most part, that has worked. So, no, we haven't questioned it. And that's great. But now some things are happening. So we have the issue at Roxham Road. We have the asylum seekers and the loophole in the Sacred Third Country Act. We have issues, of course, in the UK, which have happened after mass immigration to several countries like Sweden and, of course, Germany and England, and so on. Many places are questioning their immigration policies, their open door policies. Many places are having massive regime changes, particularly in the United Kingdom, or pardon me, in Europe, because they have to reconsider their position on this because they feel like it's maybe failing. Now, I don't think that multiculturalism is a bad thing, but I also do think it's okay to have a discussion about the negative potential aspects of it. And I don't think that responsible human beings that can have a compassionate conversation about this topic means that those people are completely unempathetic. I think I can very much empathize with the plight of the people that are coming here despite not understanding their position. I want them to have a better life. In fact, I'd like to welcome them into our country with open arms. Most Canadians do. We're generally very nice people, and this is part of why Justin Trudeau is pissing people off. This is part of why the CBC is pissing people off, because both are trying to convince us all the time, it seems, and I'm not sure why, that we are so racist and so awful. You can always hear about one random small event of someone being shitty to someone else in a bigoted way, but you never hear the 37 million people that day that did nothing bad to anyone else and did wonderful things to their fellow man, including refugees and immigrants. So It's tough when you have your government telling you that you're not good enough, you're not nice enough, and if you question this, if you say the word illegal immigrant instead of irregular, you aren't Canadian. That's been one of our MPs was accused by another MP of not being Canadian enough. Conservative, of course, was accused of not being compassionate because they used the wrong term. That's ridiculous. It's ridiculous to call someone un-Canadian or unempathetic or uncompassionate or God knows what Maxime Bernier is being called right now. To be honest, I haven't looked because I know already that it's going to be bad and it's going to be frustrating and I don't want to bother. It's so predictable and that's what makes this so pathetic. That's what makes this so pathetic is that I already know because people are very quick to jump all over the words. Who cares what someone stands for? Who cares that if under his rule, if he was in fact the prime minister of this freaking country, he might actually make things run smoothly enough that we could help people better because we wouldn't be basically forcing people into situations that make them uncomfortable and telling them that they have to comply because if they don't, well, quite frankly, they're not very kind. We have laws here, I believe it's M103 about Islamophobia because we're not allowed to express anything that might be considered Islamophobic, which at this point seems to be just questioning multiculturalism, questioning the radical Islamist terrorist attacks that have occurred in the UK that nobody wants to happen in Canada because those things shouldn't happen in our great country. Why is that Islamophobia? Why is that uncompassionate? Why can't we talk about this? Why can't we question it? Why can't our conservative MP in Quebec say, hey, I have a concern that maybe too much diversity is destroying our culture if people aren't assimilating and amalgamating because we do have division and we have little tribes and there is a sense of racial divide. And that's all that he was saying. But no, he's of course going to be accused of that very thing. No empathy, you know, and I'm sure worse. I'm sure they'll call him alt-right and maybe a freaking white supremacist because that's a fun word to throw around too. God only knows. But I do know this. When it comes to empathy, I got duped for years in the sphere of politics. I always voted for whoever I thought had the best heart and the most compassion. How do you think I voted for Justin Trudeau? And no, it wasn't his hair and his dashing good looks and charm. It was the fact that I thought he had a heart in his chest and he might do good things for people because I am an empathetic person by definition. And so you vote for this guy because you think he's going to do these wonderful things because he speaks so eloquently and so wonderfully about how much he cares and how there's going to be so much peace and prosperity and unity and marginalized people are going to be feeling better and everyone's just going to be hunky-dory and we're going to take care of Aboriginals and we're going to take care of the vets and we're going to take care of our seniors and our disabled and our children and it's just such a beautiful thing. Yeah, until the veteran goes into a Q&A without a leg because he lost it in Afghanistan in service to his country, and the answer he gets from our PM is that we don't have enough for him. There's not enough, you know? There's not enough to help you. But yet we have $52 million to spend on gender parity, which is a concept that, quite frankly, most people in Canada don't even believe in, outside of maybe urban Toronto. Honestly, if you ask any woman I've ever met in this province, I don't think that they've even heard the term if they don't follow the news, let alone believe in it. So, sure, we don't have the money for people that, you know, sacrificed, I don't know, a leg for the country, but yeah, we have money for that. Of course, we have infinite funds for people coming in through Roxham Road because if we don't, then we're bad people. Even though some of them are using that system, some of them are legitimately seeking asylum, others are using the system. There's been more than enough evidence to show that people have even planned to come here, hiring people in the States to drive them up to the border so that they can walk across, ditching electronics. It's awful. There's people just lying to get in here and they are cutting line and it is going to affect people because if you think that the difference in department and budgets matters, it doesn't because ultimately a government will try to balance their budget. And if they can't get enough from one section, they're going to pull it from another section. So ultimately, maybe right now, no one's directly being screwed. Maybe veterans and seniors and disabled people and Aboriginal people aren't getting screwed because of this. But we don't know that yet because next year we don't know how much of a deficit we're going to run because of the empathy we gave this group, which now is going to screw over this group. So I guess what I'm saying is this. If you're someone who's been duped by empathy in politics, that's okay. Sometimes it's true. Sometimes these people in politics really do want to do something wonderful and they're good people. They're not always out just to get your vote. That being said, I think a lot of them are very naive. I don't think sometimes that ultimate empathy and compassion towards every single last person for every little thing, endless chances, no concept of ever having accountability. And of course, what I believe is enabling, I don't think these are good things. I think that these are bad things. I think that overall in our society, they might make people feel good, but in the long run, they're very negative. We always need a social security net. We always need to take care of the people, the least of us, those who are suffering. But you know what's happening when you vote for empathy? You often end up only helping one group and severely screwing over another. And I promise this is true because I have been that group that's been screwed over. And if you want to know why I'm so impassioned about the immigration issue or other issues of accountability, for example, an article I recently read that an AIDS group in Saskatchewan, a nonprofit organization, is encouraging the government to provide and fund crack pipes so that people will be less likely to, I guess, get or contract HIV through needle use because there's less of a chance of it living inside the crack pipe where, of course, you only have breath and spit molecules. So I get it. I'm empathetic. I think that having an addiction would be really awful. I've had to come off of opiates because of being in pain and having been on them before and after surgeries. It's been pretty awful. I certainly have compassion. I think we should help people. I think we're funding naloxone kits and all of these great things that we're doing. And we've got, safe injection sites and everything else. So it's like, I don't think I'm uncompassionate in saying this, but I do think it's ridiculous to give people crack pipes with government tax-paid dollars when, quite frankly, I couldn't get the government to cover my Insure and Boost when I was barely able to eat anything but that and soup crackers before my surgery. I was also cut chiropractic funding. I had to beg for every dime I ever got. And I'm not even in the worst position. There's people that were far worse off than me. Do you have any idea how much disabled people struggle in this country? Do you have any idea how much they get screwed? Do you have any idea how much veterans get screwed? People that have PTSD and are severely screwed up because they fought for this country. Do you have any idea how much seniors are getting screwed and what is happening to their pension plan? Do they count? Do they count at all? Or do only this group count? Why are we empathetic towards this group and not towards that group? Because we blindly believe as liberals, I guess, that if you can just be empathetic towards everybody, everybody will be happy. And if we can just support everyone, everybody will be a good person because nobody is a bad person. And if we only gave them more of a chance, everybody would do the right thing. Bullshit. That's utopian ideology and it's bullshit. It's never going to happen. And I wish that it would, but it won't. So in the meantime, we need to focus on reality. I've been told by someone wise, and because I work in energy work and deal with trauma and psychology type, I guess, information and sources, I guess I can say this with fairly big confidence that it is true. If you don't make a decision with the balance of your head, your heart, and your gut, the decision is likely going to be poor. You're going to make a knee-jerk reaction out of emotion, and I do see this happening in the left a lot, and I saw this with myself a lot. I accused a lot of people of being non-compassionate, unempathetic, jerks, racist, whatever you want to call it, when in fact these people were some of the most generous, loyal, hardworking people I've ever met. And unfortunately, we're more worried about people's fancy pants words on Twitter and whether or not they subscribe to whatever ideology we believe is moral than actually looking at someone's content of their character and see what they're doing for the world and whether or not they are actively making things better in the long term. So, I guess I'll end here by saying this. If you're an empathetic person who has been voting simply for the most compassionate seeming person, please reconsider. I'm not saying that person isn't the right person to vote for. What I'm saying is this. You might be getting duped. They might be duped. They might think that this is going to help, but it's actually going to make things worse. Unfortunately, a strong free market is a huge part of having a successful country, and allowing people to give freely and be themselves and not calling them racist and not pushing them to the brink of frustration with endless and increasing tax dollars and constant accusations of the hidden subconscious racism that exists within all of us and the fact that we're not Canadian enough if we don't accept everyone all the time, no matter what. Maybe this sort of thing is not helping. Maybe this is why people are frustrated. Maybe it's not because they're unempathetic. So I'm going to end there because this didn't end up being really short at all, and I'd like to stop it before 15 minutes. So thank you for listening. I guess I just want to end with, again, I always say, be good to each other, not because the government tells you to. In fact, do it separately altogether, right? And this is because the government bloody well sucks at being good to people. Trust me, they're terrible at it, and no matter how much money you throw, no matter how many programs you give them, they're going to suck at it. By the time the money gets here, it trickles down, and the people at the bottom get nothing or very little. The people that are trying their hardest get screwed over by both the government and the people who are using and abusing the system. I promise you it happens every day. Please be wary of empathy. It can absolutely cause more harm than good if it is not tempered and balanced with strong rational thinking and a very strong sense of gut intuition and how to play the game and who the players are in the game and a sense of what the hell is going on. If you cannot put those things together, the decisions that you make will be terrible. Mine were, and thank God I came out of it. Empathy. E is for empathy. I don't know if you watch Andrew Klavan's Lefty's Dictionary. It's far funnier than my little segment, but I highly encourage it. So again, be good to each other. And don't let anybody tell you that you're not a good person just because you don't agree with them. If they don't know you and they accuse you of not being empathetic, that isn't very empathetic of them. Now, is it? Take good care. Ciao.